Hi, this is Gary with CEO Juice. I've had a couple of people ask for a copy of recording of this presentation that Mike and I did at ITEX. So I'm knocking it out real quick. Mike's not on it, but I'll try to cover his pieces as well. And we're talking about the importance of measuring customer satisfaction levels. So I'm a copier sales guy. Started selling copiers about 30 years ago, and every copier sales guy out there says they have the best service. And as soon as they go to work for the competition, they continue to say they have the best service. So the fact of life is there's no copier sales guy out there saying that our service is not good. So what do the potential customers hear? Well, they hear that everybody has the same best service. And as copiers start to have very similar features, then the service and the features of the copier are the same, so what's left? Price. So the point we're making here is that if you can't differentiate your service from your competitor, you're just going to be selling on price every single time. So back in the day with me, it was always, let's get you 3 references that you can call. Your prospect would expect those 3 references to be outstanding because you're picking them out. There's always the problem with the references getting overused. You have to check in and see, well, when did the last time we used John? Can we use him again? Strong referrals are by far the easiest business out there. And I'm happy to say at CEO Juice, almost all of our business comes from referrals. So this whole presentation really is focused on how to get more referrals for your business. The more people you can have saying good things and telling others that they should be using your company for this product will make your life so much easier, generate so much more referrals, generate so much more new business. The challenge with referrals is you know, how often do we ask people for them, and would we even know who to ask? So typically, the average rep will go and see a customer once or twice a year, and quite often the customer doesn't necessarily remember any of the individual things that went right or wrong over the course of the year. They'll just remember what happened in the last week or two. And at the same time, the rep has very little idea of who out there is a happy customer, unless there's some type of reference list, etc., or they've just stopped by recently. So we're fans of a system out there called the Net Promoter System, or the Net Promoter Score, which is a measurement of how happy a customer is. And it's based on a relatively simple system. It's a question, how likely are you to recommend us to a colleague or friend? And what the guys who put this system together say is that the people who are big fans will always give you a 9 or a 10 out of 10. So there are some people who always think you could do a little bit better, so they won't give you a 10, but they will give you a 9. And then people who are on the fence, rather than giving you a 5, which you might think is neutral, the Net Promoter guys say that they give you a 7 or an 8. And so while you would think that somebody giving you a 6 is better than average, these guys say no, that if somebody gives you a 6, they actually don't like your company, and if asked, will say bad things about you. So the system is based on asking people this question and then quantifying them into promoters, passives, and detractors. And so the calculation for your Net Promoter Score is pretty straightforward. It's the percentage of people who've answered this question and like you, so they've given you a 9 or a 10, minus the percentage of people who gave you a 6 or below. And we ignore the passives. So in the example I have here, if you had 1,000 responses and 400 loved you, they gave you a 9 or a 10, so that would be 40%, and then 300 didn't like you, they scored you a 6 or lower, and that would be 30%, then your Net Promoter Score would be 40 minus 30, or 10. A Net Promoter Score is a little like revenue or gross profit. You have to kind of quantify it. So you have to say, what was the Net Promoter Score for last month or last year or this year to date? And the average U.S. company in 2013 had a Net Promoter Score of 10. And there, in fact, are whole industries that have negative Net Promoter Score numbers. Apple, perhaps one of the best loved brands out there, had a Net Promoter Score of 70 for last year. Whereas the average CEO Juice client had a Net Promoter Score of 85 for 2013. So in the copier industry, we perhaps don't give ourselves the credit for the outstanding job we do, but the average copier company customer is a relatively happy camper. So the advantages of Net Promoter Score is that it's a single number. It's easy to understand. You can say, you know, what's the NPS of this customer for last year, and how has it trended this year? And obviously you can track it not just by customer, but you know, if you had multiple branches, you might want to see how one branch compares to another. You can track it by manufacturer, by model, by technician, etc. It can be an important piece of an account review or a contract renewal. So if it's time to increase a contract and perhaps there's only 7 or 8% profit and your standard increase rate's not sufficient, then knowing how happy that customer is an important metric when you decide, hey, can I bump these guys up a little higher than I would do normally? And on the flip side of that, if you have a contract that's losing money and it's obvious from the Net Promoter Score that they don't like you, maybe it's just time to cut them loose and move on. When you look at account reviews, especially these larger accounts where you're going in to meet with the decision maker, then having feedback from all of the end users is really positive information when you're justifying why they should be renewing with you. So if you Google any major corporation out there, just put their corporation name followed by Net Promoter Score, you'll discover that most major corporations are now using this system to track how happy their customers are. So how happy are your customers? We are always surprised that most CEOs really have no idea. And the larger the customer and the more layers there are between you and those technicians, it gets tough. It gets tough to know. So the lowest CEO Juice client for 2013 had a Net Promoter Score of 57. So again, the average U.S. company is 10, and we're up in the 50s and 60s. So we had 141 companies reported for that period. And just put it in perspective, in January we sent out 66,000 survey requests. So why do you need to ask after every single call? Well, the challenge is that we don't know when that one thing is going to happen that's going to excite you or disappoint you. So if we don't give you the opportunity to give feedback after every interaction, then we may miss that one time when something noteworthy happened. So what we recommend is that we always put a feedback link on a piece of useful information that your customer is happy to continue to get, so that when something happens, there's always a quick link there where they can post some feedback. So at ITEX, Mike and I were talking about how the hotels will often survey you, but you kind of delete those emails, but they'll also email you a receipt. So why not put the survey link on the receipt, and then if something noteworthy has happened, you will hit that link. Some dealers out there will have the techs leave a card behind on the copier where they can fill in. And this is kind of tied to the Starbucks receipt, where Starbucks will circle a little link on their receipt where you can go in and enter a survey and potentially win a prize or get something back. And the challenge with this system is that if your tech has just gone in and spilt a bunch of toner or done something to upset the customer, they're not going to leave a card behind. I mean, they're smart enough to know that that customer is not happy. And the same token, that the Starbucks person, if they've got an upset customer who's obviously unhappy and you've just spilt their coffee or they've had to wait for an extended time, they're not going to circle the survey link on the receipt for those guys. So there's very much the option for people to game the system under those circumstances. So we recommend, we get asked often, how can we get more people to respond? And we will always suggest that the techs should stress the fact that feedback is important, but they also need to stress the fact that unless something noteworthy has happened, we don't expect to get it back after every call. So yes, we need your feedback, but only when something noteworthy has happened. So when somebody gives you feedback, obviously you got to do something with that, and you need to have a system in place to make sure that you're managing every response where feedback is needed. And what we find is that you can have a customer who might have been what we call passive, on the fence. They would have scored you a 7 or 8, but really it's only when something goes wrong that they get to test the true level of your service. And so if you give them the option to give feedback, they get that feedback to you, and then you fix the problem quickly. You can potentially take that customer from a passive to a promoter just by taking care of the issue quickly and efficiently. So this is an example of our closed call survey. This is an email that goes out to your customers one day after the service call is marked complete. And so as far as you're concerned, it's finished. There's no reschedules. There's nothing pending in eAutomate. It's closed. And so we're just sending an email to the customer that says, hey, as far as we're concerned, it's fixed. We want to make sure it's working to your satisfaction. And so we always suggest our clients refer to this as a follow-up to make sure we fixed it correctly, rather than as a survey. And stressing the fact that we don't expect feedback after every call. On our survey, all the questions can be customized. We have evolved a list of questions that we think works particularly well. Each question has the option to notify you based on how it is answered. So for example, you might have a question, have a salesperson contact me, and if that question was answered yes, we can within 15 minutes send an email to the sales guy on the account. Or you might have a question that said, did our tech call you before arriving? And if that question was answered no, then we could email the tech and the tech's manager. We provide a dashboard where you can see lots of information around our surveys. You can see how your Net Promoter Score is trending. and choose a date range. You can see the percentage of the surveys that are being responded to. You can see what questions are being answered and what questions are being skipped and what sort of answers you get. And you could potentially, remove some questions that people are skipping or reorder some questions. There's a lot of research out there that says that, one person saying bad things about your service requires many promoters, many people saying good things to offset. And the example I use is if you Google a restaurant and you're thinking of going to eat there and you see one negative review, how many positive reviews do you need to offset that? So it's certainly more than one, and there's debate on how many, but it could be, between 3 and 10. So the system says that if you can focus on fixing the detractors first, then having less people saying bad things about you and more people saying good things about you is going to generate much more of those referrals. So we have a process where if somebody has said bad things about the company in the past, so on a survey they've been a detractor, 6 or lower, and then they go to place a new service call, well, we'll give a heads up to the tech and the text manager and whoever else you think should be notified to say, hey, we need to put the white gloves on and take extra special care of this customer. The flip side of that is if you have a customer who loves you, so they're scoring you a 10 out of 10, and they're taking the time to post a comment, well, you've got a big promoter there. So take advantage of it. They're answering, yes, I would be happy to recommend you. So let's have them recommend you. So we have a process where we can send a response. You can do it manually or we can automate it, where we say, hey, glad to see you're loving our service. It would make our day if you would post a link. And for CEO Juice, that link takes you to our LinkedIn company page. And then they're posting a comment that's permanent. So I don't have to worry about overusing this referral because I can just point anybody to that comment and it's there for everybody to see. So we encourage you to get feedback from your customers. You don't have to use CEO Juice to do it. SurveyMonkey and other tools out there work very well. You can manually send the emails out. You can even do something as basic as on the signature block of your email, just put a little link to a SurveyMonkey. For CEO Juice, if you are on eAutomate, we only work with copier dealers on eAutomate. We do offer a survey only as a service for $1,000 per year. We have additional surveys. Our second most popular after our closed call survey is our equipment install survey, where we will check to see the customer get everything they expected, how did sales do, were they trained on everything, who's the contact for accounts receivable, who's the contact for meter reads. We have the ability to send out a link on a sales order that's been shipped, so you can click here to track your package, but we can have a second link to click here and give us feedback. So again, we're putting it on a useful piece of information. So CEO Juice has 850 different processes like that. Nobody's obviously going to ask questions here, but I'm just going to roll on and just show you some comments which I posted up here. And these are just some comments. I look at all new customers' responses for the first 90 days. So when we turn on surveys for a new client, I look at all the comments that come in because I find it's a useful place to determine process breakdown, and it's typically communication, and generally we have a process that can fix that. So I'm looking to say, hey, turn on this and it'll fix this process. And so most of this is positive stuff. Our customers are always surprised that the bulk of the responses they get are positive. Communication is always the biggest issue, and letting somebody know, even if it's bad news. So bad news is better than no news. And a comment like this where the customer is saying, hey, we want you to know we really love this guy. And we have lots of clients who will kind of push this stuff out to the rest of the company, and it's a nice pat on the back for somebody doing a good job. The first top comment there is just a classic example of one little change that a tech needs to make, and would have a better interaction with everybody else. Many clients will talk about the fact that they really like, we have a process where we can send an email to say, hey, our technician John has been dispatched, he's on his way to your office, and that's a very popular process with our clients' customers. Little point there, we are able to tell who the dispatcher is as well as the tech on the call. So when you get a comment saying whoever answered the phone needs to be a little more enthusiastic, we're able to let you know who that was. So that's pretty much it. Any questions on this? Send an email to Gary@ceojuice.com. Gary@ceojuice.com. Thank you.